With the growth of EVs, disruption in utility power grids, and other demands on our electrical infrastructure, microgrid deployment is growing and looking at impressive growth over the next few years. That all said, this is a pretty new topic for me, so I wanted to turn to Samantha, Sam Childress, and Donald Don Wingate, both with Schneider Electric MicroGrid Solutions, to help me understand the state of microgrids and how they get installed and where it's going. Sam is expanding the global adoption of renewable energy by designing and commercializing microgrid and distributed energy solutions at Schneider Electric. She also serves on the board of directors of the Footprint Project, a disaster response nonprofit that helps communities following climate disasters. #Build Back Greener. Don leads the North American business development efforts for MicroGrid Solutions. He oversees the release of EcoStruxure Microgrid Flex offer that provides a first-of-its-kind configured-to-order solution. Welcome to Keeping the Lights On. I'm your host, Todd Reed, and on this podcast, I connect with the owners and pros who design, build, and maintain our electrical, communications, and industrial world to explore the best ways forward. Let's get into the show. And we do like to start out each episode with the meals that bring us together. So, Sam and or Don, if I were to visit you, where might you take me and why would you choose this?
Well, Todd, first of all, we would love to have you anytime. We have a big Schneider Electric hub right outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And this is where a lot of our microgrid team is situated. A lot of our Schneider colleagues are situated. And what our team likes to do is we like to take folks, especially new folks, to our favorite Indian cuisine spot called Cafe India. And first of all, we like to make sure that everybody likes Indian because it's a common meal for all of us to share and enjoy. And sometimes it's even a part of either our onboarding process or sometimes our interview and hiring process. And what we found is that we often have a lot of hot debate topics at lunch together. And I think that's kind of what makes it special a little bit. You got a little bit of spicy food mixed in with a little bit of spicy conversation, debates about the climate industry, how we can support it, debates about, governments and politics and economics all across the board. And it's just always been a really fun place to go and relax with colleagues. So that's where we take you. Do you like Indian food, Todd?
I do. We actually have a couple of places here in the area and a couple of Indian coworkers, and they've taken us to the places they like, which tells me it's the better places to go. And I do like it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
So I'll be there, and probably not very spicy, but I'll try some of the more mild stuff.
Sure.
I'm kind of wimpy that way.
So Todd, if you were to come visit with me, I am the definition of a remote worker well before the word was official, right? So I live in Cleveland, Ohio, and the way I like to entertain people is I'd invite you over to my home. And my wife's name is Diane, so I'd say, let's go to Diane's kitchen. And would probably, since it's, if you're coming right about now, it was very cold over the weekend, I'd probably whip up some short ribs and also have my wife has a real special salad she makes with several types of lettuce, blue cheese crumbles, apples, cranberries, and a homemade dressing. And I think we'd have a real good time and probably have a bottle of wine with that as well.
Well, okay. So we got some traveling to do, and then Sam, we'll come to your place, and then we'll go to Don's and have dinner at Diane's. So it's going to be a pretty good trip. Kind of wish I was there now for the conversation instead of remote like this. And Don, I appreciate you leading the charge with remote working. Good job. So, as I've been talking to a lot of people about EVs lately, just kind of focused on that topic a little bit, and sustainable energy. And I keep hearing about microgrids. While I can, by context, make assumptions by what that means, I have to be honest, I'm not really confident in my knowledge base about microgrids. So that's why we reached out to you all to talk about this. But can you spend a couple minutes ensuring that we're on the same page by just helping us define what is a microgrid?
Absolutely. And first of all, I'll say this is a great topic of conversation to lay the groundworks. There are many different definitions of microgrids out there. The one that Schneider Electric commonly uses, and it matches our vernacular and where we're going in the market, is the DOE's definition. It is an interconnected system of loads and sources. And the key thing is that it operates not as a bunch of unique systems, but it really operates as a single entity. So inside of homes, inside of buildings, you might have a building automation system, or you might have your EV chargers, or you might have your solar system. When you have all of those assets at your home, office, building, you want it to work in unison, in harmony. And so by bringing all those resources together, having a central brain, a central orchestrator of those resources, that's what we consider a microgrid. It's not individual systems operating on their own little island. It's operating all of those together to make the most out of your efficiency, to make the best cost savings decisions, and to make the most sustainable decisions with all of those resources. So really a culmination of all of those.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. So that makes it pretty clear. And I like the beginning you talked about it, the creation or generation and the use is kind of is connected, and that's a nice way of envisioning it. All right. So I'm pretty sure that anyone, for the most part, can build out a microgrid, but I'm kind of curious, who are some of the most common users and applications for this solution today?
Maybe I could jump in and take that one. We're finding people that want to have more control over their energy spend. Companies that want to be more sustainable with their energy usage and their energy footprint. And people that want to be more resilient, whether that be hospitals, whether that be schools, whether that be the process industry for commercial applications. People that really have to depend on energy for what they do in their life and their business. I think it's just really important to even build on what Sam said, is that people want their own little power plant, right? It's their own grid. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It's just putting things together to give people those three foundational things: economic, energy, sustainability, and resiliency. That's what a microgrid can do for you.
Well, thanks for setting that foundation. I'm curious, why am I hearing about microgrids more often?
Yeah, well, the good news is the mainstream media, our colleagues all across both Schneider Electric, across the electric industry, are hearing about it. They're asking us the same question. And I think that really comes down to kind of four major factors that are driving, the media to pick it up, the new folks to be like, hey, what is this microgrid? I think I need one. How do I get one? And I think that comes from the first thing being year over year high cost increases, double-digit cost increases for your electricity. Way outpacing inflation, and so that's one thing where you're starting to hit people's pocketbook, and so they want to know, how can I take more control over my electricity costs? Of course, a microgrid is a solution for that, but it's not just a solution for that. There's folks that are out there that are being hit with many power outages. So as our grid faces increasingly intense and powerful storms, natural disaster events, we're experiencing higher and higher rates of power outages and longer power outages too. And so folks are saying, hey, how can I meet those new challenges that my business is facing? Even customers that may not be in a direct wildfire zone or in the direct path of a hurricane might be experiencing power outages. And that is also hitting their bottom line. They can't continue their business operations, make their money because they don't have electricity, or they're running high diesel fuel backup generators in the case of power outages for prolonged periods of time. So more and more kind of resiliency issues. Then the third piece I would say is really around sustainability commitments. And it's not just the folks that are in the Fortune 500 category. It's the suppliers of those folks in that Fortune 500 category that are receiving those pressures to improve their supply chain and address some of their scope 2, scope 3 emissions. And so those folks are saying, hey, how can I address some of my sustainability targets, my carbon emission targets, by adding on-site renewable energy? And then I would say that maybe the last major piece that is interesting enough people to towards microgrids is around capacity. And we have a pretty severe lack of energy generation capacity on our grid. And we're at this kind of inflection point where we're seeing a lot more loads also come on our grid. So we're seeing, electric vehicles, we're seeing electrification of heavy industrial processes, and folks are saying, hey, I got to expand my plants, or I got to figure out some way to power these new loads. And if you call up your electric utility, you might be waiting 2 to 4 years for a new transformer, a new capacity to come to your site. And unfortunately, that's a major detractor to those folks' bottom line again. And so they're saying, hey, how can I meet my energy needs by making my own power plant on site and helping to meet my business needs faster? So those are kind of some of the major drivers where folks are saying, hey, I need this, I need power, I need reliability, and it's addressing all of those in unison together.
I think you said earlier on scope 2 and 3 emissions. Is that something you said? And if so, what does those mean? What's that mean?
Yeah, so in kind of the broad category of ESG, environmental, social governance, that's what ESG stands for. Folks are more and more being graded, being incentivized to reduce their sustainability, or to reduce their emissions, and they're making the sustainability commitments. They're categorized into scope 1, 2, and 3. Scope 2 is where your electricity production comes from. So you're buying electrons from the utility. Your utility might be producing that electricity with coal or renewables or whatever it might be. By you investing in on-site cleaner forms of electricity, you're able to offset some of those scope 2 emissions by producing clean local electricity at your site. So that's what scope 2 is. Scope 3 is really your supply chain and how your products are used out in the market. Scope 1, kind of working back upstream, is your direct emissions. And microgrids help really address both scope 2 and 3 in your supply chain.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Thanks. And are there advances in technology that are making adoption of microgrids easier?
Lots of them. You want to take that one, Don?
There are, right? When you think about it, the grid has been invented over 100 years ago, and it was designed to be one-way flow of energy, right? You have a big generation plant, transmission, down to distribution, step it down to a meter into your home, right? But that's not how it works today, and there's a lot more I'll call it these microgrid technologies, more distributed energy, and there's more two-way flow of energy that comes back and forth, right? So this combination of local generation meshed up with the traditional grid is what is going to really help the more electrification of the United States, right? That energy transition. So the technology advances of let's take things that are more standardized. Let's make microgrids more easy to implement. Let's have more control of these distributed energy resources so that the machine does it rather than a person doing it. So it can blend these things together and do it in a more simple, straightforward, repeatable, and scalable fashion. When you think about it, is if you're sitting in your home or your building, you flip a switch and you expect the electricity to flow, right? You expect those lights to go on. But the problem is there's no service level agreement, right? You don't know what your energy is really going to cost. You don't know how the quality of it or the advancement of it. And you just expect it to do what it has to do. But you have to have more control over that now. We mentioned the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. There's kind of a carrot and a stick thing going on right now. The Securities Exchange Commission just last week introduced some guidance to say you have to report how you're doing. If you're a major company, an investor-owned investor-owned company, you have to report what you're doing for energy efficiency at your own plant. You have to report on sustainability objectives for the scope 2, which is your power purchase. And you have to work to report how your supply chain is doing to get down to net zero. So the technology that's coming out right now are tools, software, hardware, business models to make this all easier for people to get to net zero, be more sustainable, and the standardization of microgrids is really leading that charge.
All right, thanks, Don. I'm curious. Are there, so you mentioned the SEC, but I'm kind of curious of any other kind of like oversights or like subsidies, financial incentives, government initiatives that might, help microgrids get, implemented more readily.
Yeah, probably some of the, when you just look at the news, the Inflation Reduction Act, the American Recovery Act, there is generational incentives that are probably once in our lifetime, trillions of dollars that are being said. We have to upgrade our infrastructure. We have to be more sustainable in what we're doing. There are a myriad number of grants and subsidies available. The government is saying whether you're a utility, whether you're a commercial customer, company, whether you're a tribal community, there are tremendous amounts of money that's now available for people that want to be more sustainable and help meet the climate objective goals that our country's established. People are now able to apply for grants, put concept papers together, get led down a good path to make it easy for people to implement these systems and take away the burden of cost. There's also tax advantages. If you put in a microgrid, you can normally get a 30% tax credit. Sometimes you can get a 40% tax bracket, depending on how the implementation is done. So we're taking away barriers that people might have perceived or are real, so that we can get to this better goal in our society of net zero, more sustainable energy that's cost effective and sustainable.
Maybe one more, kind of circling back to the carrot and stick. Obviously, those incentives are major carrots that are earmarked for these types of microgrid projects. But kind of on the stick side too, we see building codes and standards really being changed from both the national standards level to local and state adoption of different standards to drive more efficiency, more sustainability, more reliability into the building codes themselves. And since buildings account for over a third of our global kind of energy consumption and are responsible for more than a third of our emissions, we're looking at other ways where regulation using that stick method is also going to help drive faster, more standardized, more scalable decarbonization into our buildings as well, which is a major boost for the microgrid state.
All right, let's look to the future a little bit. As after we kind of had our prep call, I did a little just kind of looking around, more digging about microgrids, and I kept coming across stats of like 15, maybe more, maybe a little less, whatever, depending on the model you look at, 15% CAGR for microgrids and like for the next 6 years, 5 years, 2030 is kind of where they pushed it out to. So I'm curious. So that looks like pretty promising for implementing and getting them going. But I'm curious if you all could maybe look forward to the future just a little bit, like whatever time frame you want, 3 to 5 years or whatever. What does the world country look like with a substantial increase in microgrid deployments?
Yeah, I can jump in on this one first, Don, but you give your vision as well. For me, in 3 to 5 years, what I think success really looks like in the microgrid space is having a trained, certified, competent workforce that's out there building megawatts, hundreds of megawatts each year. We're not at that rate yet. We've started this market. It is on a major uptick kind of swing. But we need more folks to be involved in this, to be out there building the systems, maintaining the systems, optimizing them over the long term. And so really having a more experienced, certified workforce out there is really how we're going to be able to get there. And by the way, it's a major business opportunity for a number of different stakeholders along the microgrid value chain. And so we want to be a part of that. We want to help train and certified what we call eco experts, which are badged and certified partners of Schneider Electric's to go help design, build, and deploy. And it's going to take that because no one company can do this alone. We know that for a fact. So it's going to take multiple different types of partners working together to deploy. You know, that's the key word out there right now in the microgrid market.
And you know, when I look 3 to 5 years, I look at what is causing this. Right? There's more electrification of buildings. There's more electric vehicles that are going to be out there. There's more workers that have to transition. There's more need for artificial intelligence that's going to require more data centers to be built, that's going to require more pressure on the grid to provide energy that just is not available. You look at the decommissioning of coal plants that's taking away baseload generation that has to be replaced with something. And that replacement is more distributed energy resources, which are microgrids, are part of that mix. And so all these factors are contributing to something that has to be done. It's not a matter of, I think this is a nice idea, I'm going to make it work. It's the grid cannot physically support the demand for energy that's coming in the next 3 to 5 years. So what Sam articulated of the workforce, the people that are doing this, getting a really good future, it's because of all these things that are causing it. And the grid, maybe the other thing that I'll mention is the fact that there's going to be a lot more collaboration between the utilities, the traditional utilities, and the microgrids that are out there. Historically, they will push back. They push back on that because they would say, "Hey, I'm the one that generates energy. Nobody else has to do it." And now they have to do it, and they're starting to want to do it, to be more responsive to their customers, to understand that there's new sources of energy that can be valuable to both parties, both in front of the meter and behind the meter. And so I see this collaboration really kicking off in the next, it's kicking off now, and it'll just accelerate over the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, let's spend a little bit of time about how do we start to get to that future that you just outlined.
So I think from my perspective, the biggest trend that I see is the standardization of microgrids. Historically speaking, almost every microgrid that's ever been built has been engineered to order, where people will go up and what would you like and how do we do it? And a lot of engineers get involved and put things together. And when you have to do this in bulk, when you have to do dozens of them and hundreds of them, you simply just can't engineer every single one of them. So let's standardize things. Let's have common architectures, common configurations, so that we can combine both software and hardware to give people a rapid implementation of something you can get started with and that you can expand. And take mystery out of it and make it easy and straightforward for someone to say, hey, I want to get started with this. I have problems with my cost of energy. I want to make sure that I'm always operational, and I'm going to meet my sustainability objectives. So let's get going with something simple, straightforward, and standard. And I think that's the next wave that's going to hit the world, and it'll be started here in the United States.
Yeah. And time to market too is really critical to that, Todd. I would say, if we're going to get to that 3 to 5 years, that means we have to significantly shorten the time it takes to design, deliver, install a microgrid. It can't be a 2-year project cycle anymore from planning to operation. It has to be, 9 months. It has to be a lot shorter for us to be able to deliver on that. And that requires an amount of being able to standardize, being able to have reasonable lead times in the market to deliver, and then also limit on-site work, right? We want to get folks in and out of the installation and get things operational, have those solar systems making money faster for folks if we're really going to see that 3 to 5 year wave of adoption that we expect to see.
Okay, I want to focus the next couple of few minutes on our end user listeners, and then also our contractor listeners. So let's start with the end user listeners. So they're making you talked about standardized approach, making strides. You just mentioned, Sam, getting things going quicker, which everyone wants with any construction project, which is great. But it still seems like, again, this is from my perspective, limited perspective on the subject, but it seems like a big project to manage at all, pre and post construction. Can you talk a little bit about the ongoing operation and maintenance of a microgrid?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with this a little bit, is the fact that we think there's no one person can do everything. Customers are going to want an energy partner, right? Um, right now, when I mentioned you flip the switch and the light goes on in your home, that's what you want with a microgrid, right? Right now, people rely on their utility to have the maintenance, the operation, the upgrades of the system to make sure that electron flows. When you put in a microgrid, you want the same thing. You don't necessarily need to have it be people intensive. You don't need to have the construction process be difficult. That's why you bring in partners. You bring in a Graybar as an energy partner. You bring in a Schneider Electric as an energy partner. You bring in a third-party capital provider that can provide what we call energy as a service, that will be there with you from the design of it all the way through the operations and maintenance, and give the off-taker of the energy a consistent price and a consistent way to deal with things that are important to you, to make sure that your value propositions, your use cases just get done without having to worry about it. So what's evolving is the fact that or business models are out there that make it easy. Labor forces are being trained. The eco experts that Sam made, the partnership models that we have in place, it's all designed to make the end user accept the fact that you can have all these benefits without a lot of worry to go along with it.
How does a contractor who's listening to this start to become a part of this, and what role in it, in addition to installing, can they play in this opportunity?
Well, firstly, I hope that our contractors listening are recognizing the business opportunity here, and seeing that this market is in the early days, taking off already as we speak. And we want folks like you to be a part of this, to ask us questions, to figure out how to get involved. And the best way that we've created to get involved is through our Eco Expert Partner Program. There are partners out there who want to learn more about the technology, maybe know some elements or have expertise in some elements of building a microgrid. Maybe they're experts in building automation, or maybe they are experts in electrical contracting and delivering, energy infrastructure all across the US. Wherever you kind of come to the microgrid space on your journey, we want to have a plan for you. And that means upskilling your colleagues in your company on distributed energy technologies, what's out there, what's coming, what's evolving. We want to make sure that we've created the training curriculums to help go through the different use cases and configurations of microgrids. And so all of those things are really important to us in building strong partnerships. We've created a forum just for that. So if you are a contractor out there looking to figure out how you can get involved in the microgrid, in the new energy landscape, as we call it, take a look at our Eco Expert Partner Program. Graybar is a really key part of that program for us as well, in helping us deliver and take those solutions to market to the contractors. So, I think that this market is going to continue to grow and see a lot of momentum, and we want to get folks in early on building their business around this new segment.
It's really pretty simple message to the contractor, right? How would you like to provide more value to your existing customer? How would you like to help them do more, and you cement yourself by providing more added value services to your existing customers? That's what MicroGrids really provide.
All right, you've laid a great foundation. You've given some great touch points for us to think about as we think about microgrids and their growing popularity and the opportunities out there. I'm curious, do you have a good story that you would share with an end user and or contractor about an implementation and some of the struggles and successes you had with that?
I'll give you just one that's close to home, a practical one, right? We have our Andover, Massachusetts lab. It's one of the 5 R&D centers that Schneider Electric has globally, and we have a microgrid at this facility. And we are right now building an expanded laboratory, and we're adding more battery energy storage, we're adding more inverters, we're adding more generation capability. We need electrical contractors to expand that foundation that we have. So we've hired electrical contractors to come in and help us, because Schneider Electric we're not an electrician. Graybar is not an electrician. We're not a contractor. We don't do civil work. We don't do mechanical work. But whether it's at our own facility or at any of our customers, the end users are putting in microgrids, there's need for the trades. There's need for mechanical, civil, electrical, engineering people. We need a partnership model. And the example I had was we had put it in place several years ago. It's going to grow. We need those contractors, those partners to do more work.
What keeps you doing what you do? What motivates you to do this day in and day out? What keeps you excited and passionate about the work you do?
The grid as we know it has been around for 150 years, right? It's in need of a facelift, right? It needs that two-way interface. It needs to be more responsive. It needs to go back to having generation at closer to the source of the use. And to me, that is really, really exciting. I look at the state that we are with our climate change, with the health concerns that people have, with energy inequity of people that are being left behind. And the work that we're doing collectively at our company, with our partners, with the industry, is really helping to just make it a better place. I have kids that are young adults. I want them to have a good place in the world. I want to do what I can to help the people that are in my company, people that are in my industry, to take advantage of what's there and make a positive impact.
Well said, Don. I think, if I think initially what drew me to the energy industry, I think it's the same. I think that I recognize that when I flip the light switch and my power comes on, that's not the same feeling that everybody in the world has. There's many people that don't have access to electricity all across the world. There's a lot of folks that have that flip the light switch on and can't afford to pay their power bill. And if I think about all the opportunities that I've had because I have access to electricity, from being able to learn, or being able to sit here and have video chats, and all of that is underpinned by electricity, our healthcare system, all of our basic things that make life great. All of that's underpinned by having access to electricity. That's a motivator for me. If folks have access to electricity, the opportunities are endless. And if we can make cleaner, more reliable more sustainable electricity, both here and across the world, I think we can have a pretty big impact on the number of opportunities that folks have out there. So that's really what I see as kind of my driver for the energy space. Whether we see it or think about it every day or not, it's there. It's almost like magic, and we leverage it for all sorts of opportunities. And so that's what keeps me motivated, keeps me excited, keeps me doing the things that we're doing, and knowing that we have to do it together with many other people if we're really going to make that impact.
Well, Sam and Don, thank you so much for being here. It's been an eye-opening, and it's been great to have you on the show. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Todd.
Thanks for having us, Todd. Appreciate it.
That was my conversation with Sam Childress and Don Wingate from Schneider Electric MicroGrid Solutions. You can connect with Sam and Don and what they are working on by heading to the links in the show notes. I would love to hear if you're considering deploying a microgrid for your organization or community. You can send an email to me at podcast@graybar.com. If you enjoyed this episode, you can help us grow the show by subscribing and leaving a 5-star rating in your favorite podcast player and on YouTube. Thanks for listening to this episode of Keeping the Lights On. We'll see you next time.